The day began in the quietest, most ordinary way. The sun had just risen, spilling gold light across the curtains of our little house in Ohio. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for years I thought I knew what an ordinary life looked like. I had my routines, my husband Daniel, my job as a part-time librarian, and the cat we both doted on like she was a child. Her name was Bella, a calico with bright green eyes and a mischievous streak. Daniel often teased that she ruled the house more than we did, and he wasn't wrong. Every morning she followed me from room to room, meowing until I picked up her toy or shook her treat jar. She had been with us almost 10 years, ever since Daniel gifted her to me after my mother passed away. In my darkest moments, Bella had been my companion, curling up on my chest when I cried, listening with patient silence when I talked to her like she could understand every word. That particular morning, Daniel had left before dawn for work. His construction company kept him busy, sometimes too busy, and while I often missed him, I understood. I stayed home, working later at the library, but I used the mornings for myself. Coffee in one hand, I sat cross-legged on the carpet, flicking a little red laser pointer across the living room floor. Bella leapt after it, pouncing, sliding, tail flicking. It was silly, childish even, but it always made me laugh. That was the moment my nephew walked in. Jason was Daniel's sister's boy, 21 years old, a college junior home for the summer. He was like a son to us in many ways, having spent so much time at our house when he was younger. I had babysat him, helped him with homework, cooked him dinners when his mother worked late. To me, he would always be the little boy who once declared that my spaghetti was better than any restaurant's. But of course, now he was grown, tall, confident, with a teasing smile that reminded me of his uncle. He had texted earlier that he wanted to borrow some tools from Daniel's shed. I told him to let himself in if I didn't hear the door. I hadn't expected him so soon, and I hadn't expected him to catch me lying on the carpet waving a laser pointer like some secret cat trainer. The door creaked open, and Jason's voice called, "Aunt Sarah?" He stepped into the living room and froze. There I was, sprawled on the floor, laughing as Bella launched herself in a clumsy leap. His eyebrows shot up, and for a moment we just stared at each other before Bella darted under the sofa. Jason burst out laughing. Oh man, I did not expect to walk in on a whatever that was. I felt my cheeks heat. Standing quickly, I brushed off my jeans. She demands entertainment. Don't you dare tell your uncle I spend my mornings like this. Jason grinned, holding up his hands in mock surrender. Your secret is safe with me. But seriously, that was adorable. I rolled my eyes, trying to downplay the embarrassment, but I couldn't help laughing too. It was harmless. Or at least that's what I believed at the time. Later that evening, when Daniel came home, Jason stopped by again to drop off the tools. As we stood in the kitchen, he casually teased, "Uncle Daniel, you should have seen Aunt Sarah earlier. She was on the floor training Bella like she's in the Olympics." Daniel raised an eyebrow, chuckling as he looked at me. Is that true? I laughed nervously, waving it off. He's exaggerating. Bella just wanted to play. Jason smirked. I'm not exaggerating. She was rolling around with the cat. It was something. We all laughed, but when Jason left, Daniel gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. I frowned. Tell you what? That I play with Bella. He shrugged, but there was a sharpness in his tone. I just think it's funny Jason knows things about your day before I do. The comment stung more than I expected. It was such a small thing, yet it lingered. I went to bed that night unsettled, wondering why Daniel had sounded almost jealous of something so trivial. Over the next few weeks, Jason came by often. He helped Daniel with yard work, borrowed tools, sometimes just hung out while his college friends were busy. Every now and then he'd tease me about the cat games, and I'd laugh, but deep down I noticed Daniel's eyes darkening whenever those jokes came up. He didn't like it, though he never admitted why. One Saturday afternoon, Jason stopped by when Daniel wasn't home. I was in the kitchen baking cookies, something I did when I felt restless. Jason leaned against the counter, chatting about school, about how hard it was balancing everything. He had always been open with me, maybe more than with his own parents, and I listened the way I always had. He smiled when Bella jumped onto the counter to steal a crumb, and he said, "You know, you're kind of the only person I can just talk to like this." I felt touched. Well, that's what family is for. But later, when Daniel found out Jason had been over while he was gone, he grew distant. "Why doesn't he ever come when I'm home?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. It was such a tiny misunderstanding, but it grew like a shadow in our marriage. Daniel became quieter, suspicious even. He never accused me outright, but his silences, his pointed glances, his short replies spoke volumes. I tried to reassure him, to remind him that Jason was like a son, but the more I said it, the less convinced he seemed. The turning point came one evening, when I returned from the library. Jason had stopped by earlier to drop something off for Daniel, but Daniel hadn't been home yet. When Daniel walked through the door later, he noticed Jason's car pulling out of the driveway. He asked, too casually, "Was Jason here again?" "Yes," I said, setting down my bag. "He just dropped off the wrench you wanted back." Daniel stared at me for a long moment, then muttered, "Seems like he's here more for you than for me." The words cut deep. "Daniel," I said, my voice trembling, "he's your nephew. He's family. Why are you saying it like that?" He didn't answer. He just walked away, leaving me standing in the kitchen with tears welling in my eyes. From then on, things spiraled. Every laugh, every inside joke, every harmless moment with Jason felt like evidence in Daniel's eyes. I tried harder to include him, to invite him into our conversations, but the distance only grew. The silly moment when Jason caught me playing with Bella had somehow planted a seed of doubt that poisoned everything. It wasn't infidelity in the way people imagine. I never crossed a line. But in Daniel's heart, the betrayal was in the secrecy, in the laughter shared with someone else before with him. He admitted it one night after weeks of silence. "I don't like that he sees you in ways I don't. That he gets parts of you that I don't anymore." I cried because I realized then how far apart we had drifted without even noticing. It wasn't about Jason. It wasn't about Bella. It was about us, about how busy Daniel had become, how lonely I had felt, and how easily a young nephew's visits had filled the silence. We had a long, painful conversation that night. For the first time in years, Daniel admitted how much he missed me, how work had consumed him, how he feared I no longer needed him. I admitted how lonely I'd been, how the little moments of laughter with Jason had been a lifeline, even though I never meant for them to come between us. It took months to rebuild trust, to reconnect, to remember why we had chosen each other in the first place.